The underworld was never silent. Even in the absence of life, the air was alive with whispers, soft, mournful murmurs that seemed to rise from the very stones beneath my feet. The river Styx, its dark waters glinting like liquid obsidian, wound its way through the fields of asphodel, where the souls of the dead wandered aimlessly, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. Above, the sky was a perpetual twilight, neither day nor night, but a liminal space where time itself seemed to hold its breath. I stood at the edge of the palace balcony, my fingers resting lightly on the cold marble railing. Below, the sprawling city of the dead stretched out before me, its spires and arches carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the faint light. This was my domain, my kingdom, and yet tonight it felt foreign to me. "My lord," the voice was soft but steady, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to see Melina standing in the doorway, her silver hair catching the dim light like moonlight on water. She was a nymph of the underworld, one of the few who dared to speak to me as an equal rather than a subject. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, were filled with a curiosity that often bordered on recklessness. "You're troubled," she said, stepping onto the balcony. I can feel it in the air. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I gazed out at the river, where Charon's boat drifted silently, ferrying a new group of souls to their eternal rest. The ferryman's lantern swayed gently, casting flickering shadows on the water. "Something is wrong," I said at last, my voice low. "The dead, they are restless. The river Styx flows backward, and the whispers, they grow louder." Melina frowned, her brow furrowing. "The dead do not act without reason. Perhaps they sense something we do not." I turned to face her fully. "And what could they sense that I, the king of the dead, cannot?" She hesitated, then reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a scroll. It was ancient, its edges frayed and its surface covered in symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. "I found this in the library," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It speaks of powers long forgotten, gifts from the primordial gods themselves. Powers that you, my lord, may have once possessed." I took the scroll from her, my fingers brushing against hers. The moment I touched it, a shiver ran through me as though the parchment itself was alive. Unrolling it, I saw the symbols shift and writhe, forming words in a language I had not seen in eons. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice tight. Melina stepped closer, her eyes scanning the text. "It speaks of 3 abilities hidden away by the primordial gods. The breath of Thanatos, the veil of Erebus, and the chains of Styx. These powers were meant to be yours, but they were sealed away lest they upset the balance of the cosmos." I stared at the scroll, my mind racing. If this was true, then the disturbance in the underworld was no mere coincidence. Something or someone was trying to awaken these forgotten abilities. "Why now?" I murmured, more to myself than to Melina. "Why after all this time?" She placed a hand on my arm, her touch grounding me. "Perhaps the balance has already been upset. Or perhaps this is a test." I looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. Melina had always been loyal, but she was also fiercely independent, unafraid to challenge me when she believed it necessary. "We must find the truth," I said, rolling the scroll and tucking it into my robe. "If these abilities exist, then they could either save this realm or destroy it." Melina nodded, her expression resolute. "Where do we begin?" I glanced back at the river, where the whispers of the dead grew louder, almost deafening. "We start with the Furies. If anyone knows the secrets of the primordial gods, it is they." As we turned to leave the balcony, the air seemed to grow heavier, the shadows deepening around us. The underworld was no longer the realm of order I had ruled for millennia. It was a place of mystery, of danger, and of secrets long buried. And as we stepped into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The journey to the Furies was not a long one, but it was fraught with unease. The air grew colder as we descended deeper into the underworld, the faint light of the palace fading behind us. The path was narrow, flanked by jagged rocks that seemed to lean inward as though trying to swallow us whole. The whispers of the dead followed us, their voices growing more insistent, more desperate. Melina walked beside me, her silver hair shimmering faintly in the gloom. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted to the shadows. She was not afraid, she had never been afraid, but she was wary, and rightly so. The underworld was no longer the realm of order I had ruled for millennia. It was a place of chaos, of secrets, and of dangers even I could not fully comprehend. "Do you think the Furies will help us?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. "They have no choice," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "They serve the balance of the underworld, just as I do. If that balance is threatened, they will act." Melina nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "And if they refuse?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know. The Furies were ancient, older even than I was, and their loyalty was not to me but to the natural order. If they believed that revealing the truth about my forgotten abilities would upset that order, they might choose silence over cooperation. We reached the Furies' domain as the path widened into a cavernous chamber. The air here was thick with the scent of sulfur, and the walls glistened with moisture. In the center of the chamber stood the three sisters, their forms shifting and flickering like flames. Alecto, Megara, and Tisiphone, each more terrifying than the last. Their eyes burned with a cold, unyielding light, and their wings, black as midnight, stretched out behind them like a storm cloud. "Hades," Alecto said, her voice a low growl. "What brings you to our domain?" I stepped forward, my hand resting on the hilt of my bident. "The underworld is in turmoil. The dead are restless, the river Styx flows backward, and whispers of forgotten powers echo through the shadows. I need to know why." The Furies exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. For a moment I thought they would refuse, but then Megara stepped forward, her gaze piercing. "You seek the truth," she said, her voice like the crack of a whip. "But the truth is not always kind, Hades. Are you prepared to face what you have forgotten?" I hesitated, the weight of her words settling over me like a shroud. "I have no choice. If these powers are mine, then I must understand them. For the sake of the underworld." Tisiphone, the most silent of the three, tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "The Isle of the Forgotten," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There you will find the answers you seek. But beware, Hades. The isle is guarded by one who bears you no love." "Cronus," I said, the name leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "My father, the Titan I had overthrown to claim my throne. If he guarded the isle, then this journey would be more dangerous than I had anticipated." Melina stepped forward, her chin lifted in defiance. "We will face him together." The Furies regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "You are bold, little nymph," Alecto said. "But boldness will not save you from what lies ahead." "We'll see," Melina replied, her voice steady. With a final nod from the Furies, we turned and left the chamber, the weight of their words heavy on my shoulders. The path to the Isle of the Forgotten was not marked on any map, but the Furies had given us a clue. Follow the river Styx to its source, and we would find what we sought. The journey was long and arduous. The river twisted and turned, its dark waters churning with an unnatural energy. The whispers of the dead grew louder, more frantic, as though they were trying to warn us of something. Melina and I spoke little, our minds focused on the task ahead. At last we reached the source of the river, a vast black lake surrounded by jagged cliffs. In the center of the lake was the Isle of the Forgotten, a desolate patch of land shrouded in mist. The air here was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath our feet was soft, like the flesh of a corpse. As we approached the shore, a figure emerged from the mist. He was tall and gaunt, his skin pale and his eyes hollow. His hair, once golden, was now a tangled mass of gray, and his robes hung loosely from his frame. "Cronus," I said, my voice cold. The Titan regarded me with a mixture of hatred and amusement. "My son," he said, his voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "What brings you to this forsaken place?" "I seek the truth," I replied, my grip tightening on my bident. "The truth about my forgotten powers." Cronus laughed, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You think you are ready for the truth? You who overthrew me and claimed my throne. You who have spent eons playing at being a king. I am no longer the child you knew," I said, my voice steady. "I am the king of the dead, and I will not be denied." Cronus's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "Very well. If you wish to know the truth, then you must face the labyrinth of Lethe. Only then will you prove yourself worthy." Before I could respond, the ground beneath us began to shift, the mist swirling around us like a living thing. When it cleared, Melina and I stood at the entrance of a massive labyrinth, its walls towering above us like the bones of some ancient beast. "The labyrinth of Lethe," Melina murmured, her voice filled with awe. It erases memories, doesn't it? I nodded, my heart heavy with dread. Yes, and if we are not careful, we may lose ourselves entirely. As we stepped into the labyrinth, the whispers of the dead grew louder, more insistent. The walls seemed to close in around us, and the air grew colder with each step. Somewhere in the depths of the maze, the truth awaited us, but at what cost? The labyrinth of Leth was unlike anything I had ever encountered. Its walls, towering and ancient, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, their surfaces etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the whispers of the dead echoed through the narrow passages, their voices a cacophony of sorrow and regret. Melina walked beside me, her silver hair shimmering faintly in the gloom. She carried herself with a quiet determination, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted to the shadows. She was not afraid, she had never been afraid, but she was wary and rightly so. The labyrinth was a place of forgetting, where memories were stripped away like leaves in a storm. "Do you feel it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my grip tightening on my bident. The labyrinth is alive. It feeds on memories, on the essence of who we are. We must be careful. As we ventured deeper into the maze, the walls seemed to shift and change, the passages twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I felt a strange pull, as though the labyrinth itself was trying to draw me in. "Hades," Melina said suddenly, her voice tinged with alarm. "Do you remember why we came here?" I frowned, trying to recall the details of our journey, but the memories were hazy, like fragments of a dream. We came to find something. Something important." Melina's eyes widened. "The scroll. The forgotten abilities. Do you remember?" I shook my head, a cold knot of fear forming in my chest. The labyrinth was already working its magic, erasing our memories piece by piece. If we didn't find a way out soon, we would lose ourselves entirely. "We need to focus," I said, my voice firm. "We must hold on to what we know, or we'll never make it out of here." Melina nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we keep moving. The truth is here somewhere. We just have to find it." We pressed on, the passages growing narrower and more twisted with each step. The air grew colder, and the whispers of the dead became a deafening roar. I could feel the labyrinth's influence growing stronger, its tendrils wrapping around my mind, pulling at my memories. "Hades," Melina said again, her voice trembling. I can't remember your name." I turned to her, my heart pounding. Her violet eyes were wide with fear, and her hands trembled as she reached out to me. "I know you're important," she said, her voice breaking. "But I don't know why." I took her hand, squeezing it tightly. "You're Melina. You're my confidante, my guide. We came here to find the truth about my forgotten abilities. Do you remember?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I can't." The labyrinth was taking her memories faster than I had anticipated. If I didn't do something soon, she would be lost to me forever. "Stay with me," I said, my voice firm. "We'll get through this together." As we continued through the maze, I focused on the one memory that seemed to resist the labyrinth's influence. The scroll. The ancient parchment, its symbols glowing faintly, had led us here. It was the key to everything. "The scroll," I murmured, more to myself than to Melina. It spoke of 3 abilities: the breath of Thanatos, the veil of Erebus, and the chains of Styx. If we can remember them, we can find our way out. Melina frowned, her brow furrowing in concentration. "The breath of Thanatos, that sounds familiar. It's the power to restore life, isn't it?" I nodded, a spark of hope igniting within me. "Yes, and the veil of Erebus allows one to shroud themselves in darkness. The chains of Styx bind souls to the will of the wielder." As we spoke, the walls of the labyrinth seemed to shudder, the symbols glowing brighter. The whispers of the dead grew louder, more frantic, and I felt a strange pull, as though the labyrinth itself was responding to our words. "We're close," I said, my voice filled with determination. "The truth is just ahead." We rounded a corner and found ourselves in a vast chamber, its walls lined with towering statues of the primordial gods. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a shimmering orb of light. "The Chamber of Primordial Secrets," Melina whispered, her voice filled with awe. As we approached the pedestal, the orb began to pulse, its light growing brighter with each beat. I reached out to touch it, but before I could, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Cronus, his form gaunt and pale, his eyes burning with a cold, unyielding light. "You've come far, my son," he said, his voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "But the truth you seek comes at a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" I stepped forward, my grip tightening on my bident. "I am the king of the dead. I will not be denied." Cronus smiled, a cold, mirthless expression. "Very well, then face the truth." With a wave of his hand, the orb shattered, its light flooding the chamber. Images flashed before my eyes, scenes of my past, my triumphs, my failures, my deepest fears. I saw myself as a child, standing before my father, my hands trembling with fear. I saw the moment I overthrew him, claiming my throne. And I saw the moment I sealed away my forgotten abilities, fearing the chaos they would unleash. The memories came rushing back, each one more vivid than the last. I felt the weight of my past, the burden of my choices, and the truth of who I was. "The abilities were never hidden from you," Cronus said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You hid them from yourself. You feared the power they would give you, the responsibility they would bring." I turned to him, my heart heavy with understanding. "I was afraid," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid of what I might become." Cronus nodded, his expression unreadable. "And now, are you still afraid?" I looked at Melina, her violet eyes filled with determination. She had stood by me through everything, even when the labyrinth threatened to strip her of her memories. She believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I am ready." Cronus smiled, a genuine expression this time. "Then take your place, my son. The underworld needs its king." As the light faded, I felt a surge of power, the forgotten abilities awakening within me. The breath of Thanatos, the veil of Erebus, and the chains of Styx, they were mine once more. But with them came a new understanding, a new responsibility. The balance of the underworld rested on my shoulders, and I would not falter. The chamber of primordial secrets was silent, save for the faint hum of the shattered orb's lingering light. The air was thick with the weight of revelation, and the statues of the primordial gods seemed to watch us with their stone eyes, their expressions unreadable. Cronus had vanished, leaving Melina and me alone with the truth, and the power that now coursed through my veins. "Hades," Melina said, her voice trembling with awe. "Do you feel it? The power, it's incredible." I nodded, my hands trembling as I clenched them into fists. The breath of Thanatos, the veil of Erebus, and the chains of Styx, they were mine once more, their energies intertwining with my essence. But with them came a responsibility I had long avoided, a burden I had feared to bear. "We must return to the underworld," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. "The unrest will only grow worse if we delay." Melina nodded, her violet eyes filled with determination. "Then let's go. The dead need their king." As we turned to leave the chamber, the ground beneath us began to tremble, the walls of the labyrinth shuddering as though in protest. The whispers of the dead grew louder, more frantic, and I felt a strange pull, as though the labyrinth itself was trying to keep us here. "Hades," Melina said, her voice tinged with alarm. "Something's wrong." Before I could respond, the air before us shimmered and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was not Cronus this time, but something far more terrifying. A being of pure chaos, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its eyes burned with a cold, unyielding light, and its voice echoed through the chamber like the roar of a storm. "Hades," it said, its voice a cacophony of whispers and screams. "You dare to reclaim what was lost? You dare to challenge the balance?" I stepped forward, my bident glowing faintly in the dim light. "I am the king of the dead. The balance of the underworld is mine to protect." The creature, the eidolon of chaos, laughed, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You are a fool, Hades. You think your newfound powers will save you. They will only bring destruction." Melina stepped beside me, her hands glowing with a faint, silvery light. "We'll see about that." The eidolon's form shifted, its body expanding until it filled the chamber, its shadowy tendrils reaching out toward us. I raised my bident, the chains of Styx materializing in my hand, their dark links glowing with an otherworldly light. "Stay close," I said to Melina, my voice low. "We face this together." The battle was fierce, the eidolon's attacks relentless. It struck with the force of a hurricane, its shadowy tendrils lashing out at us with deadly precision. I countered with the chains of sticks, their dark links binding the creature's form, but it was not enough. The Eidolon was a force of chaos, a manifestation of the primordial fear that had driven me to seal away my powers in the first place. "Hades," Melina cried, her voice filled with desperation. "We can't hold it off forever." I clenched my teeth, my mind racing. The Eidolon was a reflection of my own fears, my own doubts. To defeat it, I would have to confront the part of myself I had long buried, the part that feared the power I now wielded. "Melina," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "I need you to trust me." She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Always." I closed my eyes, focusing on the power within me. The breath of Thanatos, the veil of Erebus, and the chains of Styx, they were not just tools, but extensions of who I was. I had feared them because I feared myself, but no longer. With a deep breath, I unleashed the full extent of my abilities. The veil of Erebus shrouded the chamber in darkness, rendering the Eidolon blind. The chains of Styx bound its form, their dark links glowing with an otherworldly light. And the breath of Thanatos, the power to restore life, I turned inward, using it to heal the wounds the Eidolon had inflicted on my soul. The Eidolon roared, its form writhing as it struggled against the chains. "You cannot defeat me, Hades. I am chaos. I am fear." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You are a shadow, a reflection of what I once was. But I am no longer afraid." With a final surge of power, I shattered the Eidolon's form, its shadowy tendrils dissolving into nothingness. The chamber fell silent, the whispers of the dead fading into the background. Melina stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. "Hades, you did it." I nodded, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The battle had taken its toll, but I felt a sense of peace I had not known in eons. The Eidolon was gone, and with it, the fear that had haunted me for so long. "We must return to the underworld," I said, my voice steady. "The dead need their king." Melina nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's go." As we left the chamber, the labyrinth seemed to shift and change, its walls parting to reveal a path back to the Isle of the Forgotten. The journey was swift, the whispers of the dead now a distant murmur. When we reached the shore, Cronus was waiting for us, his expression unreadable. "You have done well, my son," he said, his voice filled with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. "But the balance of the underworld is a fragile thing. Use your powers wisely." I nodded, my heart heavy with understanding. "I will." With a final nod, Cronus vanished, leaving Melina and me alone on the shore. The journey back to the palace was uneventful, the whispers of the dead now a comforting hum. When we arrived, the unrest had subsided, the river Styx flowing once more in its proper course. "Hades," Melina said, her voice filled with awe. "You've done it. The underworld is at peace." I nodded, my heart heavy with the weight of my newfound responsibility. "For now, but the balance is fragile, and the line between order and chaos is thinner than I once believed." Melina placed a hand on my arm, her touch grounding me. "You're not alone, Hades. I'll stand by you no matter what." I looked at her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "Thank you, Melina. I couldn't have done this without you." As we stood on the palace balcony, the city of the dead stretched out before us, its spires and arches bathed in the faint light of the eternal twilight. The whispers of the dead were a comforting hum, a reminder of the balance I had sworn to protect. But as the screen faded to black, a faint whisper echoed through the underworld. "The children of Nyx are awakening."